Australian coins carry more than just monetary value. They tell stories of history, design, rarity, and even hidden treasures waiting to be discovered in pocket change. Among them, the 10-cent and 20-cent coins have fascinated collectors for decades. From older issues of the 1970s and 1980s to more modern strikes. Each coin holds unique details, minting quirks, and potential collector worth that make them exciting to explore. In this video, we'll dive deep into specific years of Australia's 10-cent and 20-cent coins, uncovering their background, design, and what makes them valuable today. First up, the 1976 Australian 10-cent coin. When we talk about Australian decimal coins, the 10-cent piece always stands out for its elegance and simplicity. And among its many issues, the 1976 Australian 10-cent coin carries a special charm for both everyday collectors and serious numismatists. At first glance, it might look like just another common piece of change, but when you dig deeper, you'll find fascinating history, design brilliance, and surprising value potential hidden within this small silver-colored coin. Let's start with the basics. The 10-cent coin was first introduced in 1966 when Australia switched from pounds, shillings, and pence to the decimal system. The coin has always carried the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II on the obverse side, while the reverse proudly features the Australian lyrebird, a symbol of uniqueness and cultural pride. The design was created by Stuart Devlin, the renowned goldsmith and jeweler who designed many of Australia's decimal coins. By 1976, the 10-cent coin had already been in circulation for a decade, but every year's minting carried slight differences and varying levels of availability, which affect how collectors view them today. Now, the 1976 issue of the 10-cent coin was struck at the Royal Australian Mint in Canberra, and like most of the coins from the mid-70s, it was made of copper-nickel alloy. The weight comes in at 5.65 grams, with a diameter of 23.6 millimeters and a thickness of 2 millimeters. Its edge is reeded, giving it that classic coin feel that jingles distinctly in the hand. At the time, millions were minted for circulation, making it a widely used coin in everyday transactions. But here's the interesting part. While many were minted, high-grade survivors, especially those in pristine, uncirculated or proof condition, are not as common as you'd think. Collectors are always on the lookout for the 1976 10-cent coin in the highest possible grades, such as MS65 or higher. These coins, with their crisp details and minimal handling marks, can be worth far more than their face value. While a circulated example might just fetch a few cents over face value, uncirculated ones can climb into the tens of dollars, and special proof strikes can be worth even more. This is where casual collectors often get excited, because a coin that seems ordinary in your change could actually have hidden worth if it has been preserved carefully. What really makes the 1976 Australian 10-cent coin attractive to numismatists is not just the coin itself, but the era it represents. The mid-70s were a period of transition in Australia, both economically and culturally. Decimal currency was still relatively new, and coin collecting was growing in popularity. Kids and families were beginning to take notice of the coins in their pockets, comparing dates, and setting aside interesting finds. So, the 1976 10-cent coin is often remembered fondly as part of that first wave of widespread coin-collecting interest across Australia. Now, let's talk about errors and varieties. Every collector dreams of finding that special one, the coin with a minting flaw that transforms it from ordinary to extraordinary. For the 1976 10-cent coin, errors are rare but not impossible. Some reported varieties include misstrikes, off-center strikes, and partial collar errors where the rim isn't fully formed. These oddities, when authenticated, can skyrocket in value because they are so unusual. Imagine holding a coin that escaped the mint with a unique flaw. Suddenly, it's not just worth 10 cents, but potentially hundreds of dollars depending on rarity and condition. Another interesting aspect is the role of this coin in proof sets. The Royal Australian Mint produced proof versions of the 1976 10-cent coin as part of collector sets, and these are among the most sought after today. Proof coins are struck with special dies and polished blanks, giving them a mirror-like finish and incredibly sharp detail. If you happen to own a 1976 10-cent proof coin in its original packaging, you're looking at a piece with far greater collector value than an ordinary circulation coin. Beyond just the market value, let's appreciate the artistry of the design. The obverse side features the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, designed by Arnold Machin, which was used on Australian coins from 1966 through to the mid-1980s. This portrait shows the Queen wearing the Girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara, and it has become an iconic image of the monarch during that era. The reverse side, of course, showcases the lyrebird, one of Australia's most remarkable native birds. Known for its ability to mimic sounds and for its ornate tail feathers, the lyrebird represents resilience and uniqueness, fitting symbols for the nation's coinage. From a collector's perspective, condition is everything. Circulated 1976 10-cent coins are plentiful, but most of them have scratches, dings, and wear from decades of use. Finding one in as struck condition, bright, lustrous, and flawless, is like searching for treasure. Prices can jump significantly when coins are graded by professional services, such as PCGS or NGC. A top-graded 1976 10-cent could fetch upwards of $50 to $100 or more, depending on collector demand and rarity in that grade. That's quite a leap from just 10 cents. But let's not forget the sentimental value. For many Australians, the 1976 10-cent coin may have been part of their childhood pocket money, perhaps used to buy sweets, toys, or even saved in piggy banks. Holding on to one today can evoke nostalgia, linking the present with the past. That emotional connection often makes coins more meaningful than their market value alone. In the world of numismatics, coins like the 1976 Australian 10-cent remind us that every coin tells a story, from the people who designed it, to the hands that used it, to the collectors who preserve it today. It may not be the rarest or most expensive coin in Australian history, but its charm lies in its accessibility and the sense of discovery it offers. You never know, tucked away in a coin jar or hidden in an old collection, there could be a shining example of this very coin waiting to surprise its next owner. So, the next time you come across a 1976 Australian 10-cent piece, don't just think of it as small change. Think of it as a piece of Australian heritage, a little work of art, and maybe, just maybe, a hidden gem of value. That's what makes this coin truly special in the eyes of collectors and enthusiasts. Next up, the 1978 Australian 10-cent coin. When it comes to Australian decimal coins, every year has its own little story to tell, and the 1978 Australian 10-cent coin is no exception. While it might seem like just another silver-colored coin from the late 70s, it's actually a fascinating piece of Australia's numismatic history. Collectors today still search for high-quality examples of this coin, and its design, background, and potential collector value make it worth exploring in depth. Let's start with the basics. The Australian 10-cent coin was first released in 1966 with the introduction of decimal currency. By 1978, the coin had already been in circulation for over a decade, but it still carried the same iconic design that collectors love today. On the obverse side, you'll find the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, designed by Arnold Machin. This portrait, showing the Queen wearing the Girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara, was used on Australian coins from 1966 all the way through 1984. On the reverse side, you'll find the lyrebird, designed by Stuart Devlin. The lyrebird, with its ornate tail feathers curling gracefully, is a stunning reminder of Australia's rich wildlife and one of the most recognizable reverse designs in the country's coinage. The 1978 Australian 10-cent coin was struck at the Royal Australian Mint in Canberra. Like its predecessors, it was made of a copper-nickel alloy, giving it a silvery appearance. It weighs 5.65 grams, has a diameter of 23.6 millimeters, a thickness of 2 millimeters, and features a reeded edge. In other words, it has all the same physical specifications as other 10-cent coins of the era. But what makes it stand out are its mintage figures, condition rarities, and its place in history. Now here's the key fact. In 1978, a relatively large number of 10-cent coins were minted, running into the tens of millions. This means that, at the time, these coins were common in circulation and widely used in everyday transactions. However, over the decades, many have been lost, damaged, or worn down from heavy use. That's where the collector's interest really kicks in. Finding a pristine, uncirculated 1978 10-cent coin with sharp details, no scratches, and full mint luster is far rarer today than it might sound. So how much is a 1978 Australian 10-cent coin worth? Well, in circulated condition, it's usually just worth its face value or a small premium. However, uncirculated examples can be worth anywhere from $5 to $20, depending on quality. Coins that have been professionally graded at high levels, such as MS-65 or higher, can reach even higher prices, sometimes selling for $50 or more if collector demand is strong. And then there's the proof version. Proof 1978 10-cent coins were struck for collector sets by the Royal Australian Mint, and these are the real gems of the year. Proof coins, with their mirror-like finish and incredible detail, can be worth $30 to $60 or more, especially when housed in their original packaging. But let's make this more exciting by talking about what collectors truly crave: errors and varieties. The 1978 10-cent coin is known to exist with some minting errors, though they're relatively scarce. Reported examples include off-center strikes, broad strikes, and coins struck on slightly misaligned planchets. These errors can drastically increase value, with some rare pieces fetching hundreds of dollars at auction. Even small die cracks or doubling on the lettering can be enough to catch a collector's eye. That's why it's always worth taking a closer look at your old coins. You never know when you might stumble upon an error that transforms a 10-cent coin into a much more valuable piece. Beyond just monetary value, the 1978 Australian 10-cent coin represents a snapshot of life in Australia during the late 1970s. Decimal currency was now fully ingrained in daily life, and the novelty of the system had worn off, but coins were still something people noticed. Many Australians today remember using 10-cent coins like this one to buy snacks, pay for phone calls, or feed into arcade machines. That nostalgia adds an extra layer of charm, especially for collectors who grew up in that era. One of the reasons the 10-cent coin remains so beloved is the lyrebird design on the reverse. The lyrebird isn't just beautiful, it's also unique in the animal kingdom. Known for its incredible mimicry skills, the lyrebird can imitate chainsaws, camera shutters, and even other birds with astonishing accuracy. This quirky and remarkable bird is perfectly captured in Devlin's design, with its flowing feathers spreading across the coin's surface in an elegant curve. It's not just a coin, it's a tiny piece of Australian wildlife art. When talking about value, it's important to emphasize the role of condition and presentation. A circulated 1978 10-cent coin might just blend in with change, but if you find one in mint state, it can be quite a find. Collectors often place these coins in protective holders or albums to preserve their condition. If you're lucky enough to find one that looks like it just came out of the mint, you might have something worth far more than its humble face value. The proof coins from 1978 are especially worth highlighting. These were struck with highly polished dies and specially prepared blanks, resulting in a brilliant mirror-like background and frosted raised details. The contrast is stunning, making the design pop out in a way circulation coins simply can't match. Proof coins are always minted in much smaller numbers, which makes them more valuable to collectors. For example, while tens of millions of circulation strikes may exist, only a few tens of thousands of proof coins were made, making them highly collectible today. Another point of interest for collectors is the long-term potential of coins like the 1978 10-cent. While it may not be rare in absolute numbers, the fact that high-grade examples are so scarce means that values could rise over time as collectors compete for the best specimens. Coins from the 1970s are becoming increasingly popular among younger collectors who weren't alive at the time but appreciate the vintage appeal. This new wave of interest can push values upward in the future. Now let's add a little collector's tip. If you're hunting for 1978 Australian 10-cent coin, don't just look in circulation. Check coin dealers, estate sales, old family collections, and even coin rolls from banks. You'd be surprised how often valuable coins turn up in unexpected places. And if you're lucky enough to find an error coin, make sure to get it authenticated by a reputable grading service. That's the best way to maximize its value if you ever decide to sell. At the end of the day, the 1978 Australian 10-cent coin may not be the rarest or most valuable coin in the world, but it has everything a collector could ask for: history, beauty, nostalgia, and the thrill of potential value. It's part of the journey of Australia's coinage, representing a time when the country was embracing its decimal system while still holding onto traditional imagery like the monarch's portrait in native wildlife. So the next time you come across a 1978 10-cent coin, take a moment to really look at it. Admire the detail of the lyrebird, the timeless portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, and think about the millions of Australians who once held that same coin in their hands. Whether you see it as small change or as a valuable collector's item, the 1978 Australian 10-cent coin is a fascinating piece of numismatic history that continues to capture imaginations today. Next up, the 1983 Australian 10-cent coin. When you think of the coins that passed through countless hands in the 1980s, the 1983 Australian 10-cent coin is definitely one of them. At first glance, it might just seem like an ordinary piece of pocket change, but for coin collectors and history lovers, it has layers of interest that make it worth a closer look. From its design and production details to its value in today's market, this coin proves that even small denominations can have big stories. Let's start with the design. Like all Australian 10-cent coins since 1966, the 1983 issue features the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II on the obverse and the famous lyrebird on the reverse. The obverse portrait was designed by Arnold Machin, who created a regal yet approachable image of the Queen wearing the Girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara. This portrait had been in use since decimal currency was first introduced in 1966, and by 1983 it was still the standard, soon to be replaced a few years later in 1985. The reverse design, by Stuart Devlin, shows the beautifully detailed lyrebird, with its ornate tail feathers curling across the coin. The lyrebird isn't just decoration. It symbolizes Australia's unique wildlife and culture, giving the coin both beauty and meaning. Now, let's look at the specifications. The 1983 10-cent coin was struck at the Royal Australian Mint in Canberra. Like other coins of the series, it's made of copper-nickel alloy, giving it a silvery appearance. It weighs 5.65 grams, measures 23.6 millimeters in diameter, and has a thickness of 2 millimeters with a reeded edge. These physical specs are identical across most years of the 10-cent coin, but what makes the 1983 issue interesting is its place in numismatic history. Here's a fascinating fact. Number 10-cent coins were released into circulation in 1983. Instead, the only 1983 10-cent coins produced were struck for mint sets and proof sets. That means if you find a 1983 10-cent coin, it almost certainly came from a collector's set rather than for pocket change. This makes the 1983 issue much scarcer than other years, and that scarcity is exactly what excites collectors. Unlike the 1970s issues, which were minted in the tens of millions, the 1983 10-cent coin had a much smaller mintage, restricted to collector products. Because of this, the 1983 Australian 10-cent coin is far more valuable than most other 10-cent coins from the era. While a circulated coin from the 1970s might only be worth $1 or $2 in nice condition, the 1983 issue is worth significantly more because it was never released for general circulation. Mint set coins, which were struck to a higher standard than circulation coins, usually trade for several dollars each, while proof coins can be worth even more, often $10 to $20 depending on condition and demand. And if the coin is still housed in its original mint packaging, collectors are willing to pay a premium for that. The proof version of the 1983 10-cent coin is particularly beautiful. Proof coins are struck using specially polished dies and blanks, giving them a mirror-like surface and frosted details. The lyrebird's feathers almost seem to come to life under the light, and the queen's portrait appears crisp and detailed in a way that circulation strikes can't match. These proof coins were sold directly to collectors by the Royal Australian Mint, and today they remain highly sought-after pieces of 1980s Australian coinage. So what makes the 1983 10-cent coin especially appealing to collectors? It's all about scarcity and condition. Since the coins were never circulated, most examples you find are in uncirculated or proof condition. That means they look stunning compared to circulated coins of other years. But because the total mintage was limited to sets, there aren't as many around. This scarcity increases their collector value, especially as interest in 1980s decimal coins continues to rise. Let's put it in perspective. A standard 10-cent coin from the 1970s or 1990s might only be worth a small premium above face value in uncirculated condition, but the 1983 issue can easily fetch several dollars, even in mint set condition. Proof coins can go higher, particularly if graded by professional services like PCGS or NGC. A top-grade example could be worth $30 or more, depending on market demand. That's not bad for a coin with a face value of just 10 cents. Now let's add another layer of excitement: errors and varieties. Since the 1983 10-cent coins were produced in relatively small numbers for sets, error coins are extremely rare. However, a handful of misstrikes and unusual varieties have been reported. For example, coins with slight die flaws, doubling, or weak strikes can occasionally be found in mint sets. Because errors from this year are so scarce, they are highly prized and can fetch hundreds of dollars if authenticated. Collectors love these oddities because they combine rarity with the special circumstances of the 1983 release. But beyond the technical details and collector values, let's not forget the cultural and historical significance of this coin. Australia in 1983 was going through a period of change and modernization. The economy was shifting, new leadership was taking the country in fresh directions, and Australian culture was evolving in exciting ways. Coins like the 1983 10-cent are reminders of that era, a time when decimal currency was still relatively young, but already deeply woven into everyday life. Another fascinating aspect is the way the 1983 10-cent coin connects collectors across generations. For older collectors, it's a reminder of the sets they may have bought or received as gifts in the early 80s. For younger collectors, it's a challenge to track down because it wasn't released into circulation. That generational appeal keeps demand steady and ensures the coin's place as a highlight of the 10-cent series. Collectors also appreciate the coin's artistic value. Stuart Devlin's lyrebird design is widely regarded as one of the most beautiful Australian coin designs ever produced. The flowing curves of the feathers, the fine detail, and the way the bird dominates the reverse all contribute to its iconic status. On the obverse, Mackin's portrait of the Queen captures an important era of her reign, giving the coin a dignified and timeless look. Together, these designs make the 1983 10-cent coin a small but powerful work of art. So what's the takeaway for collectors today? The 1983 Australian 10-cent coin is a sleeper treasure in the world of decimal coinage. It's not a coin you'll stumble across and change, but if you collect mint sets or proof sets, it's one of the highlights of the series. Its limited mintage, beautiful design, and strong demand all make it a must-have for serious collectors of Australian decimal coins. To sum it up, the 1983 Australian 10-cent coin might be small in size, but it's big in significance. With no circulation strikes, only mint and proof set issues, and a design that continues to impress collectors, it stands out as one of the more desirable coins of the 1980s. Whether you're adding it to a collection, investing for the future, or simply appreciating its beauty, the 1983 10-cent coin is a gem worth celebrating. Next up, the 1998 Australian 10-cent coin. The journey of Australia's decimal coinage has many milestones, and one of the overlooked yet fascinating stops along that journey is the 1998 Australian 10-cent coin. While some coins grab attention because of their extreme rarity or error varieties, others, like the 1998 issue, shine because they represent a specific period in Australia's numismatic history. Collectors often underestimate coins from the late 1990s, but the truth is, the 1998 10-cent coin has stories to tell, values to reveal, and beauty to showcase that make it far more than just spare change. Let's start with the design because this coin carries two classic images that Australians have grown up with. On the obverse, you'll find a portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, designed by Raphael Maclauff. His design was introduced in 1985 and used until 1998. So, the 1998 10-cent coin marks the final year this portrait appeared on the 10-cent piece. This is what makes the coin a little more special than many realize. It's not just another date, it's the closing chapter of the Maclauff portrait era. The queen is shown wearing the royal diadem, with flowing hair and a more stylized, almost sculptural look compared to earlier portraits. On the reverse, we have the unmistakable lyrebird design by Stuart Devlin. The lyrebird, with its long, curling tail feathers sweeping across the coin, has remained unchanged since decimalization began in 1966. It's one of Australia's most iconic coin designs, instantly recognizable and admired for its intricate detail. The lyrebird isn't just decoration. It represents the uniqueness of Australian wildlife, and its ability to mimic sounds makes it one of the most remarkable birds in the world. Devlin's choice of the lyrebird has given Australia one of the most beautiful and enduring reverse coin designs. Now, moving on to the specifications. The 1998 Australian 10-cent coin is struck from a copper-nickel alloy, giving it a durable silvery look that resists corrosion and stands up to decades of use. It weighs 5.65 grams, has a diameter of 23.6 millimeters, a thickness of 2 millimeters, and a reeded edge. These specs haven't changed since the introduction of the coin in 1966, providing consistency in the series. What makes 1998 stand out is the mintage. Around 49.3 million 10-cent coins were struck that year for circulation. That's a healthy number, which means the coin isn't considered rare in circulated form. You can still find examples of the 1998 10-cent in change today if you're lucky. However, while it's common in lower grades, finding high-quality, uncirculated examples is far less easy. Millions of coins circulated heavily, leaving scratches, dents, and worn details. But pristine mint-state coins, especially those graded MS65 or higher, are much scarcer, and that's where collectors focus their attention. So, what is the 1998 Australian 10-cent coin worth? In circulated condition, it's usually just worth face value or slightly more to collectors filling gaps in their collections. But in uncirculated condition, values climb to $5 to $10 depending on eye appeal and grading. Proof versions of the coin, which were included in 1998 mint sets, can be worth even more, often $15 to $30. If professionally graded in top condition, like MS67, the coin can command even higher prices, sometimes over $50. For what started as a simple 10-cent piece, that's an impressive leap in value. The proof coins are worth highlighting here. Produced by the Royal Australian Mint in small numbers for collectors, they were struck on specially prepared blanks with polished dies, resulting in mirror-like fields and frosted designs. The contrast makes Devlin's lyrebird leap out in stunning detail, while Maclauff's final-year portrait of the Queen looks sharper and more dignified than on circulation strikes. Owning a 1998 proof 10-cent is like holding a miniature piece of art. Collectors also get excited about the final-year significance of this coin. From 1999 onwards, the obverse portrait of the Queen was changed to the Ian Rank Broadley effigy, which is more realistic and less stylized. That means the 1998 10-cent coin is the very last issue to feature Raphael Maclauff's portrait on this denomination. For collectors, last year coins are always appealing because they mark the end of an era. This alone makes the 1998 coin a must-have in a complete 10-cent series collection. Let's not forget about error coins and varieties. While the 1998 issue was generally well struck, errors can induce slip-through. Off-center strikes, die cracks, and planchet flaws are possible, though they're not common. When such errors are discovered, they can fetch substantial premiums, often hundreds of dollars depending on severity and uniqueness. Collectors are especially drawn to coins where part of the design is missing due to misstrikes, as these are visually striking and highly collectible. Another point of interest is the context of the era. The late 1990s were a time of big changes for Australia. The country was moving toward the Sydney 2000 Olympics, preparing for the new millennium, and even engaging in debates about becoming a republic. Coins from the 1990s carry with them that sense of transition, bridging the old world of traditional monarchy-based designs with the more modern outlook of the 21st century. The 1998 10-cent coin is right at the heart of that transition, symbolizing both continuity and change. Now, here's something collectors love: the nostalgia factor. For many Australians, the 1998 10-cent coin was part of their childhood or teenage years. It might have been used to buy candy, snacks, or even slotted into arcade machines during the golden age of video gaming. Holding on to one today can bring back memories of those simpler times, giving the coin sentimental value beyond its monetary worth. From a collector's strategy perspective, the 1998 Australian 10-cent coin is a smart addition to any collection. Not only is it affordable in most conditions, but it also has long-term potential because of its final year status for the Maklauf portrait. As more collectors realize this significance, demand could grow, especially for uncirculated and proof examples. If you're building a complete collection of 10-cent coins, the 1998 is non-negotiable. It's the link between the old portrait era and the new one that began in 1999. Another tip: if you're searching for high-quality 1998 coins, don't just rely on circulation finds. Instead, look for rolls of uncirculated coins that may still be available through dealers, or search for coins taken directly from mint sets. These examples will give you the sharp details and mint luster that collectors crave. For proof coins, make sure they're still in their original packaging, as this adds to their authenticity and value. Let's also appreciate the artistic balance of the 1998 coin. Devlin's lyrebird design on the reverse remains one of the most elegant and enduring motifs in Australian numismatics. Paired with Maklauf's refined yet distinctive portrait of the Queen, the coin has a timeless look that still appeals today. Even though millions were minted, the coin doesn't feel mass-produced. It feels crafted with artistry that stands out when compared to some of the more modern designs. Next up is the 1989 Australian 10-cent coin, a fascinating piece of Australia's decimal currency system that continues to intrigue collectors, historians, and everyday people who come across it. While it might look like an ordinary small coin with a silver appearance and a familiar lyrebird design, the 1989 10-cent coin has its own charm, history, and collector appeal. Today, we'll take a deep dive into this coin, covering its design details, history, minting background, production numbers, errors, and of course, its current value and worth for collectors. The 10-cent coin was first introduced in 1966, when Australia made the switch from the old pound, shillings, and pence system to the decimal currency system. The 10-cent coin directly replaced the old florin, which was worth 2 shillings. Since then, the coin has kept the same size, weight, and main design, making it one of the most stable coins in Australia's decimal system. The 1989 version continues this tradition, but is part of a very specific era in Australian coinage that makes it particularly interesting. On the obverse side of the 1989 10-cent coin, you'll find a portrait of Queen Elizabeth II. This portrait was designed by Raphael Maklauf, whose effigy of the Queen was used on Australian coins from 1985 through 1998. In this design, Queen Elizabeth II is shown wearing the royal diadem crown, with the words Elizabeth II Australia 1989 inscribed around the border. This effigy is very distinct compared to earlier and later portraits, as it carries a more elegant and decorative style, with the Queen looking slightly more regal. The reverse side of the coin features one of the most iconic designs in Australian coinage history, the superb lyrebird, designed by Stuart Devlin, the same artist who created many of the other decimal coin designs in 1966. The lyrebird is one of Australia's most unique birds, famous for its extraordinary ability to mimic sounds from its environment, including chainsaws, car alarms, and other birds. In the coin's design, the lyrebird is shown in an elegant and striking pose, with its large, ornate tail feathers spread upward in a graceful curve. The numeral 10 is featured prominently next to the bird, representing its value in cents. Now, let's talk about the technical specifications. The 1989 Australian 10-cent coin is made of copper-nickel alloy, consisting of 75% copper and 25% nickel. It weighs 5.65 grams, has a diameter of 23.60 millimeters, and a thickness of around 2 millimeters. The edge of the coin is milled, meaning it has tiny ridges running around the circumference. These dimensions and features have remained consistent since the coin's first release in 1966, which helps collectors and everyday users recognize it instantly. When it comes to mintage, the 1989 10-cent coin was produced in relatively high numbers at the Royal Australian Mint in Canberra. Over 49 million coins were struck for circulation that year, making it one of the more common issues. However, not all coins survive in pristine condition, as most of them circulated heavily through the Australian economy. Coins from the 1980s often show significant wear and tear, making high-grade examples much harder to come by today. For collectors, the 1989 Australian 10-cent coin holds more appeal in its uncirculated and proof versions. Proof coins were specially minted for collectors and feature a mirror-like finish with highly detailed frosted designs. These coins were struck using polished dies and planchets, and they were not meant for circulation. Instead, they were sold directly to collectors in presentation cases. The proof version of a 1989 10-cent coin can be quite valuable, depending on its condition and the original packaging. Now, let's talk about errors and varieties, which are often the most exciting part of coin collecting. While the 1989 10-cent coin is not known for a huge number of major varieties, there are some error coins that have appeared from time to time. These include off-center strikes, die cracks, cuds, and double strikes. Such minting errors can make the coin significantly more valuable, sometimes fetching hundreds of dollars at auction, depending on the severity and uniqueness of the error. Another factor that adds value is the condition of the coin. In circulated condition, the 1989 10-cent coin is generally only worth its face value of 10 cents, unless it has an error. But in uncirculated or mint-state condition, these coins can be worth a few dollars each, and much more if they grade highly on professional coin grading scales like MS-65, MS-66, or higher. Proof coins from 1989 can also sell for higher amounts, sometimes reaching $20 to $50 depending on demand and the marketplace. The historical context of the 1989 Australian 10-cent coin is also worth mentioning. This coin comes from a time when Australia's economy was undergoing significant changes in the late 1980s. Inflation was a concern, and coins like the 1-cent and 2-cent pieces were still in circulation, though they would be withdrawn just a few years later in 1992 due to rising production costs. The 10-cent coin, however, remained useful and continued to be produced in large numbers. It was commonly used for vending machines, payphones, parking meters, and everyday purchases. Collectors today often look back on the 1980s as an interesting period for Australian coinage. The Maklauf portrait of the Queen gives coins from this era a very specific character, making them easy to identify at a glance. For anyone who collected coins as a child in Australia during the late 1980s or early 1990s, the 1989 10-cent coin may carry strong nostalgic value. Beyond collecting, the design of the 10-cent coin has cultural significance. The lyrebird is a uniquely Australian symbol, representing creativity, adaptability, and resilience. By placing this bird on the coin, Australia celebrated its natural heritage and ensured that everyday citizens carried a piece of this identity in their pockets. The lyrebird remains one of the longest-standing designs on Australian decimal coins, unchanged since 1966, which speaks to its timeless appeal. Another interesting fact about the 1989 10-cent coin is its durability. Made from a strong copper-nickel alloy, these coins can last decades in circulation without becoming completely worn out. Many 1989 coins are still found in circulation today, though usually with considerable wear. This long lifespan is one reason why collectors value finding high-grade, uncirculated examples. They are much rarer than the heavily used ones. For investors and serious collectors, a coin like the 1989 Australian 10 cent may not be considered a key date or an especially rare piece, but it does hold its place in complete collections. For those building a year-by-year collection of Australian decimal coins, the 1989 10-cent is essential. Proof and mint set versions from that year are particularly desirable, as they represent some of the finest examples of the coin. In terms of market value today, circulated examples are usually only worth face value. Uncirculated examples in brilliant condition might fetch anywhere from $2 to $10, while proof versions can range from $20 to $50 depending on condition and demand. Rare error coins, however, can reach much higher prices, often exceeding $100 or more. Next up is the 1980 Australian 20-cent coin, a piece of Australian currency that not only carries monetary worth, but also an impressive place in numismatic history. The 20-cent coin has been in circulation since 1966, introduced during the shift from the old British-style pounds, shillings, and pence to the decimal currency system. By 1980, Australia was already over a decade into using decimal coins, and the 20-cent denomination had proven itself as one of the most practical and widely used coins in everyday transactions. But what makes the 1980 edition so special? Why do collectors seek it? And how can a coin that originally carried a simple face value of just 20 cents now command far higher prices in today's coin market? Let's dive deep and uncover the full story. First, let's understand the design of the coin. The obverse, or the front side, features the familiar portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, as designed by Arnold Mackin. This portrait shows the Queen wearing the Girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara and is one of the most iconic and widely used depictions of her across Commonwealth nations during the 1970s and 1980s. For the reverse, we see the famous platypus design by Stuart Devlin, who is the official designer of Australia's decimal coinage. The platypus, a native animal unique to Australia, swims gracefully through rippling water across the surface of the coin. The bold yet simple artwork became instantly recognizable, and it remains one of the most beloved Australian coin designs even to this day. Now, why do collectors show a particular interest in a 1980 Australian 20-cent coin? The reason lies in the mintage numbers and variations. In 1980, the Royal Australian Mint in Canberra struck a significant number of these coins, over 41 million pieces. That may sound like a massive number, and indeed, it means the coin was not particularly rare in terms of general circulation. However, collectors know that not all coins are created equal. While millions entered pockets, wallets, and cash registers, a much smaller portion of high-quality coins survived in uncirculated or proof condition. These are the examples that drive the collector market today. One of the most exciting elements of the 1980 20-cent coin is the presence of errors and varieties. Coin errors are highly desirable among numismatists because they represent rare minting accidents that make a coin one of a kind. Some known error varieties for the 1980 coin include off-center strikes, where the design is not properly aligned with the coin's rim, and clip planchets, where a small piece of metal is missing from the edge of the coin due to a misfeed during production. There are also reports of double strikes, where the coin was hit twice by the die, creating a blurred or shadowed image of the design. These mistakes turn an ordinary 20-cent coin into a highly prized collectible, often fetching prices well above $100, sometimes even higher depending on the rarity and condition of the error. The condition, or grade, of the coin also makes a tremendous difference in its value. Coins are graded on a scale ranging from poor, fair, and fine, all the way to uncirculated and proof condition. A heavily worn 1980 20-cent coin that has spent decades changing hands might only be worth its face value, 20 cents. However, a coin that has been preserved in near-perfect mint condition, with its original shine and no scratches, can be worth far more. Collectors are often willing to pay anywhere between $10 and $50 for pristine, uncirculated examples, and for coins graded by professional agencies like PCGS or NGC, the price can easily climb into the hundreds of dollars. Let's also not forget the proof coins. In 1980, the Royal Australian Mint issued proof sets for collectors, which included specially struck coins with mirror-like finishes and razor-sharp details. The 20-cent coin in these proof sets is far scarcer than its circulation counterpart, and these coins are highly valued today. A proof quality 1980 20-cent coin can sell anywhere between $20 and $100, depending on its condition and whether it is still housed in its original mint packaging. Another fascinating aspect is the metal composition of the 20-cent coin. Like other Australian 20-cent coins of its era, the 1980 issue was struck in copper-nickel, consisting of 75% copper and 25% nickel. This composition not only gives the coin its distinctive silvery appearance, but also ensures its durability in circulation. Unlike older silver coins, these copper-nickel pieces don't have intrinsic bullion value, but their collectability makes them valuable nonetheless. Interestingly, the 1980 Australian 20-cent coin has also caught attention internationally, not just among Australian collectors. Coin enthusiasts around the world admire the platypus design and the historical significance of the coin as part of Australia's decimal revolution. Many international collectors seek it as part of a broader set of Australian decimal coins, while others hunt for specific varieties and errors that only exist in certain years. This global interest has helped to increase demand and raise prices in the secondary market. So how can you tell if your 1980 Australian 20-cent coin is worth more than face value? First, examine the condition. If it still has its original mint luster, no scratches, and sharp details, it's already more valuable than an average worn example. Second, check for errors or varieties. Tilt the coin under good light and look for doubling, misalignments, or missing details. Even small irregularities can make a huge difference in value. Third, if you own a proof coin, check whether it's still sealed in its original case from the Royal Australian Mint, as this boosts its desirability among collectors. Some extraordinary examples of a 1980 20-cent coin have sold at auctions for hundreds of dollars, particularly those with dramatic minting errors. Imagine holding a coin that once purchased a newspaper or a piece of candy, but today is worth 500 times its face value. That's the magic of coin collecting. It transforms everyday objects into treasures with stories to tell. In terms of investment, the 1980 20-cent coin represents a fascinating opportunity. While it may not be as rare as some older Australian pre-decimal coins, its affordability makes it an excellent starting point for new collectors. Beginners can easily acquire circulated examples, while advanced collectors can chase the higher grades, proof issues, and error varieties. Over time, as high-quality specimens become scarcer, their value is likely to increase. Let's put this into perspective. Imagine a young Australian in 1980 pulling a shiny new 20-cent coin from their change after buying a drink. Fast forward 4 decades later, that very coin, if carefully stored, could now be worth $50 or more. And if it happens to be an error coin, its value could soar even higher. This transformation from ordinary pocket change to a prized collectible is what makes the 1980 Australian 20-cent coin so fascinating to discuss and so thrilling to collect. Next up is the 1981 Australian 20-cent coin, a fascinating piece of Australian currency that carries with it more history, design elements, and hidden value than many collectors realize. At first glance, it might look like an ordinary coin, but as we dive deeper into its story, you'll discover that this particular year is a significant chapter in the history of Australian numismatics. Whether you're a seasoned coin collector, a casual hobbyist, or just someone curious about the value of coins in your pocket, this 1983 20-cent coin is worth learning about. The Australian 20-cent coin was first introduced in 1966, the same year Australia officially transitioned from the old pounds, shillings, and pence system to decimal currency. Replacing the florin, worth 2 shillings, the 20-cent coin quickly became one of the most popular and widely circulated denominations in the country. Its design, featuring the distinctive platypus swimming through the water on the reverse, made it instantly recognizable and beloved. By the early 1980s, this coin had already become a staple of daily Australian commerce. Now, let's focus on the 1983 release. Over 55 million coins were struck at the Royal Australian Mint in Canberra that year, which means the mintage was relatively high compared to some other years. Because of this, you might assume that the coin is common and holds little value today. But the truth is more nuanced. While the regular 1983 20-cent coin may not seem rare, factors such as condition, mint errors, historical importance, and collector demand have elevated its significance over time. One of the most intriguing aspects of the 1983 20-cent coin lies in the broader economic and cultural context of that time in Australia. The early 1980s were a period of transition in the country. Australia was modernizing, the economy was shifting, and inflation was influencing everyday life. Coins like the 20-cent piece played an important role in commerce, being used widely in daily purchases such as transport fares, groceries, newspapers, and even public payphones. The 20-cent coin had significant purchasing power compared to today, and holding on to one for 1983 can feel like stepping back into a very different time in Australian history. From a design perspective, the coin continued the tradition established in 1966. The obverse side front in 1983 still featured the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, designed by Arnold Machin. This portrait had been in use since 1966, showing the Queen wearing the Girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara. For collectors, the Machin portrait era is particularly beloved because it captures a youthful and elegant image of the Queen, making these coins highly nostalgic. The reverse, of course, displayed the famous platypus, an animal unique to Australia, designed by Stuart Devlin, the man often referred to as the designer of Australia's decimal coinage. But here's where things get more exciting. Even though millions were minted, collectors are always searching for high-grade examples of the 1983 20-cent coin. When you find one in uncirculated or proof-like condition, its value can shoot up dramatically. A coin that has been preserved in pristine shape, showing no signs of wear, scratches, or dullness, can fetch $10 to $30 from collectors, and sometimes more, depending on the market. If the coin happens to be a proof strike, specially minted with a mirror-like surface, it could be worth $50 to $100 or even higher. Now, let's talk about what truly excites collectors: errors and varieties. In 1983, like in other years, certain coins were struck with minting mistakes that went unnoticed at the time, but later became treasures for sharp-eyed collectors. Examples include off-center strikes, broad strikes, weak strikes, die cracks, and even double strikes. These minting anomalies can turn a common coin into something worth hundreds of dollars. Some rare examples of 1983 20-cent coins with unique errors have been known to sell for $300 to $500, depending on the rarity and visibility of the error. Imagine holding a simple 20-cent coin that could pay for a collector's prize display case. Another fascinating aspect of the 1983 Australian 20-cent coin is its role in complete coin sets. Many collectors focus on building full runs of Australian 20-cent coins from 1966 all the way to the present. That means every year has significance, and 1983 is no exception. If someone is missing this year from their collection, they will actively seek it out, sometimes paying above average prices for a coin in superior condition. This demand helps keep the 1983 issue relevant and valuable on the market, even though it was struck in large numbers. Now, let's look at the metal composition. Like other Australian 20-cent coins, the 1983 piece is composed of 75% copper and 25% nickel, giving it a distinctive silver-gray appearance. It weighs 11.3 grams, has a diameter of 28.52 millimeters, and a thickness of 2.5 millimeters. This makes it one of the larger and heavier circulating coins, which adds to its popularity among collectors. The weight and size give it a satisfying feel in hand, making it a coin that stands out both visually and physically. Another interesting point is that the 1983 coin represents the last full year before the introduction of the Raphael Maklauf portrait of Queen Elizabeth II in 1985. This means the 1983 20-cent coin holds historical importance as part of the closing years of the Machin portrait era. For collectors who focus on portraits of the Queen, this detail adds an extra layer of significance to the coin. Beyond numismatics, coins like the 1983 20-cent piece serve as cultural artifacts. They tell the story of a time when Australia was evolving economically and socially. In 1983, Bob Hawke became prime minister, ushering in major changes for the nation. Holding a coin from that year connects us directly to that moment in history, making it more than just a piece of metal. It's a tangible link to Australia's journey. In terms of current market values, circulated examples of the 1983 20-cent coin generally trade for around 50 cents to $2, depending on their wear and overall eye appeal. High-grade uncirculated examples, especially those graded by professional services like PCGS or NGC, can command anywhere from $20 to $100 or more, depending on grade. Proofs and error coins can push well beyond those figures. So, if you have a 1983 20-cent coin lying around, don't overlook it. Check its condition carefully. Look for any unusual errors, and consider whether it might be worth grading or adding to your collection. With the right example, what seems like an ordinary coin could end up being a valuable treasure. In conclusion, the 1983 Australian 20-cent coin may not be the rarest in the series, but it has undeniable importance for collectors. It combines rich history, a beloved design, ties to a significant era of Australian life, and the potential for hidden value in the form of high-grade strikes and mint errors. That's what makes this coin so special. It proves that even in a high mintage year, there are always treasures waiting to be discovered. So, next time you come across a 1983 20-cent coin, don't just toss it aside. Take a closer look. You might just have a piece of history and a coin worth far more than 20 cents. Next up is the 1982 Australian 20-cent coin. The 1982 Australian 20-cent coin holds a special place in the history of Australian currency, not just because of its iconic platypus design, but also because of the particular events surrounding its minting year. For collectors, historians, and everyday Australians, the coin represents more than just 20 cents. It reflects a snapshot of Australia's economy, artistry, and cultural identity during the early 1980s. Even today, it can be a hidden treasure in your pocket change, with some rare varieties commanding prices far beyond their face value. The 20-cent coin was first introduced in 1966 during Australia's transition from pounds, shillings, and pence to the decimal system. The design by Stuart Devlin, featuring the playful platypus gliding through water, became instantly recognizable and has remained a national favorite ever since. The 1982 issue continued this proud tradition, but came with unique characteristics, making it a coin worth paying close attention to. In terms of circulation, millions of these coins were minted, making them common in day-to-day use. However, the real story begins when we look at condition, errors, and varieties. Collectors know that while a circulated 1982 20-cent coin may only be worth its face value, uncirculated and proof versions, especially those with errors, can fetch impressive sums on the open market. Proof sets from 1982, which included the 20-cent coin, were struck with mirror-like finishes and were sold directly to collectors. These coins, if preserved carefully, can be valued significantly higher today. Now, let's talk about errors, because that's where things get exciting. Some 1982 Australian 20-cent coins have been found with striking errors, such as off-center strikes, partial collar errors, or even die cracks. Each error coin is unique, and its rarity drives collectors to pay much higher than normal. An error coin that originally passed through the mint unnoticed can now sell for hundreds of dollars, depending on its uniqueness and condition. Imagine pulling one of these from CoinJar. It would be like finding buried treasure. Another important factor for collectors is grading. Coins are graded on a scale from poor to perfect mint state, and the value of a 1982 Australian 20-cent coin can multiply dramatically depending on its grade. For example, a heavily circulated coin might only be worth 20 cents, while a mint state coin with no wear, strong luster, and a sharp strike could be valued at $20, $50, or even higher. Top-graded examples certified by professional grading services are particularly sought after by serious numismatists. To put this in perspective, some collectors have reported selling high-grade 1982 20-cent coins for hundreds of dollars at auctions, especially if they're part of a proof set or have a remarkable error. While most everyday examples won't make you rich, It's the rare and pristine coins that become the stars of coin shows and auctions. But the value of the 1982 Australian 20-cent coin isn't just in dollars. It's in history. The early 1980s were a time of economic change and modernization in Australia. Inflation was shaping daily life, and the cost of living was rising. Yet, coins like the 20-cent piece provided a sense of stability and continuity. Its design hadn't changed since its introduction, and seeing that platypus in circulation was a reminder of Australia's unique identity. The platypus itself is an iconic symbol, chosen for its uniqueness and rarity, much like the coins it adorns. It's one of the world's most unusual creatures, a mammal that lays eggs, has a duck-like bill, and is native only to Australia. By placing the platypus on the 20-cent coin, Stuart Devlin captured the essence of Australian wildlife and gave a nation a coin design that continues to resonate decades later. Now, let's step into the collector's market today. In Australia and internationally, the 1982 20-cent coin has carved a niche for itself. Collectors are always hunting for coins from significant years, and 1982 stands out because of the availability of both circulation strikes and proof issues. Proof coins in original packaging can fetch $50 to $100 or more, while high-grade circulation coins may range from $5 to $20. Error coins, of course, can skyrocket well beyond those numbers depending on their rarity. It's also worth mentioning that coin collecting is not just about value. It's about the thrill of the hunt. Finding a 1982 20-cent coin in your change may not seem like much, but discovering one in pristine condition or with an unusual feature can feel like uncovering a hidden gem. Many collectors started their journey with simple coins like the 20-cent, only to later build impressive collections worth thousands of dollars. There's also a strong emotional connection. For Australians who grew up in the 1980s, the 20-cent coin is a nostalgic reminder of childhood purchases, school canteens, and everyday life. It wasn't just money. It was part of their story. That emotional connection often makes these coins more desirable to collectors, ensuring that their legacy continues. In conclusion, the 1982 Australian 20-cent coin may not seem extraordinary at first glance, but when you look closely, it's filled with history, artistry, and hidden value. Whether it's the timeless platypus design, the proof coins with stunning finishes, or the rare error coins that slip through mint controls, each 1982 20-cent piece tells a story. For collectors, it's not just about owning a coin. It's about holding a piece of Australia's cultural and economic journey. So, the next time you come across a 1982 20-cent coin, take a closer look. You might just have a treasure in your hands. The 2001 Australian 20-cent coin is more than just a piece of circulating currency. It's a small treasure with history, design artistry, cultural significance, and in some cases, surprising value for collectors. To understand the beauty of this coin, we need to dive into its origin, its physical features, the mintage numbers, error varieties, and how it fits into the bigger picture of Australian numismatics. Whether you're a coin enthusiast, casual collector, or someone who simply stumbled upon this coin in your change, you might be holding a piece worth far more than its face value. First, let's talk about the year 2001 itself, which was one of the most important years in Australia's modern history. It marked the centenary of federation, celebrating 100 years since Australia became a federated nation in 1901. To honor this, the Royal Australian Mint released several commemorative coins, including special issues of the 20-cent, 50-cent, and $1 denominations. These coins weren't just about money. They were about celebrating identity, history, and unity. Now, the 2001 Australian 20-cent coin came in two main types: the standard platypus design, which continued as the regular issue, and the special commemorative releases that carried Federation-themed designs. This makes 2001 particularly exciting because collectors could find both everyday circulation coins and limited edition issues. The standard 2001 20-cent coin carried the same design that has been in place since 1966 when Australia switched to decimal currency. On the reverse side, you'll find the iconic platypus swimming through rippling water, created by the legendary designer Stuart Devlin, who also designed many of Australia's decimal coins. The platypus is one of Australia's most unique native animals, a semi-aquatic mammal with a duck-like bill, webbed feet, and a beaver-like tail. Its inclusion on the coin is a perfect representation of Australia's unique wildlife. Flip the coin over, and you'll see the obverse featuring Queen Elizabeth II, as was standard for all Commonwealth coinage. The portrait in 2001 was the fourth portrait, designed by Ian Rank Broadley. This version of the Queen showed a more realistic and mature depiction compared to earlier portraits, making it one of the easiest to recognize for modern collectors. But what really excites collectors are the 2001 commemorative issues. During the Federation celebrations, the Royal Australian Mint released coins representing each Australian state and territory. The 20-cent Federation series included unique designs for New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland, South Australia, Western Australia, Tasmania, the Northern Territory, and the Australian Capital Territory. Each coin displayed distinct symbols tied to the region's identity. For example, some featured coats of arms, unique floral emblems, or historic references. This means the year 2001 gave collectors a huge range of 20-cent coins to chase, far beyond the regular platypus design. Let's talk about mintages. For the standard 2001 platypus 20-cent coin, millions were struck, making them quite common in circulation. However, the Federation commemorative series had much lower mintages, typically between 2 million to 3 million per design. That may sound like a lot, but in the world of coin collecting, lower mintage numbers can create scarcity and increase value, especially as many were lost in circulation, damaged, or simply not saved. Now comes the most fascinating part, the errors and varieties. Collectors love error coins, and 2001 has its share. Some 20-cent coins from this year have offsetter strikes, cuds, extra metal blobs due to die breaks, or die cracks. These can turn an ordinary 20-cent coin into something worth tens or even hundreds of dollars, depending on rarity and condition. Another interesting variety to watch out for is the rotated die error, where the Queen's head on the obverse does not align properly with the platypus on the reverse. These are rare and very collectible. When it comes to value, condition is everything. A well-circulated 2001 20-cent platypus coin may only be worth face value, maybe a bit more, to collectors filling date sets. But uncirculated examples, especially from mint rolls or mint sets, can sell for a few dollars each. The Federation commemorative 20-cent coins, on the other hand, are much more sought after. Depending on the specific state or territory, prices can range from a couple of dollars up to $20 or more for pristine, uncirculated examples. Complete sets of all Federation 20-cent coins can be worth significantly more, particularly if they're still sealed in original mint packaging. For serious collectors, the hunt is not just about value, but also about history and meaning. The Federation commemoratives tell the story of Australia's national identity, its states, and its people. Holding a 2001 20-cent coin is like holding a piece of a bigger story, one that connects to the nation's journey from Federation in 1901 to a modern, multicultural society in the 21st century. It's also worth noting that the Royal Australian Mint produced special collector versions of these coins in proof and uncirculated sets. These are struck with higher quality and often feature sharper details and mirror-like finishes. Proof versions in particular can be worth a premium, often selling for much higher than face value. Collectors today consider the 2001 20-cent Federation series one of the highlights of modern Australian numismatics. Not only are they visually appealing, but they also represent a turning point in Australia's commemorative coin history, showing how coins can be used to educate and celebrate culture beyond just being money. Now, let's look at what makes these coins exciting in the market. In 2025, demand for Federation coins has increased as younger collectors are now appreciating the designs they grew up with. As circulation finds become scarcer, prices continue to climb. A full set of 2001 Federation 20-cent coins in high grade can fetch anywhere between $60 and $150, depending on condition and packaging. Rare error varieties, like rotated dies or significant off-center strikes, can sometimes sell for hundreds of dollars to specialist collectors. The 2001 Australian 20-cent coin also holds sentimental value. For many Australians, these coins remind them of the Federation celebrations, the events, and even the advertisement from that year. Some people save them as souvenirs, while others spent them without realizing their future worth. That's the beauty of coin collecting. Every coin has a story, and its journey through people's hands makes it even richer. To wrap it up, the 2001 Australian 20-cent coin is not just an ordinary piece of change. Whether it's the classic platypus version, the State and Territory Federation commemoratives, or the rare era varieties, each one carries history, culture, and potential value. For collectors, it's a must-have year, and for everyday people, it's a reminder that treasures can be hiding in plain sight, even in your pocket change. So next time you come across a 2001 20-cent coin, take a closer look. You might just be holding a piece of Australia's history, and possibly a coin worth much more than 20 cents.